If you think back to any great 80s power ballad,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's be real, any dramatic Taylor Swift bridge, it's always about that same feeling, right?
Mm.
That like dizzying high, the crazy obsession, the need to be near that person.
Totally. We talk about broken hearts. We sing about fate.
But the question is, if love is just, a bunch of chemicals firing off, why does it feel so cosmic, so much bigger than just biology?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We treat it like this grand mystery, this abstract thing. But the science, the sources we're diving into today, they paint a different picture.
Okay.
It's not just poetry. It's actually a measurable physiological state. You can literally see its tracks in the brain.
All right, let's get into that. So, our mission for this deep dive, we're exploring the science behind that head over heels, can't eat, can't sleep kind of love. We want to understand what's happening in your brain, how it actually helps us survive, and yeah, why it feels so addictive.
So when people talk about being head in the clouds in love, the neuroimaging studies suggest it's more like their brain's reward circuits are lighting up like crazy.
Exactly. It's like Times Square in there, especially specific regions tied to reward, motivation, attachment.
So what are the main hotspots? What lights up when you, say, look at a picture of someone you're intensely in love with?
Well, the big star here is the ventral tegmental area, the VTA.
Okay.
It's this dopamine-producing powerhouse deep in the brain's reward system. It's all about motivation, desire, pleasure. Basically, it's the bit that says, ooh, I like this, let's do that again.
So the VTA firing up is like a big green light from your brain saying, yes, more of this person. You got it. And what's really interesting is the detail in how it activates. So the VTA lights up for both maternal love and romantic love, but functional neuroimaging meta-analyses show subtle differences.
Like what?
For maternal love, it tends to be more activity in the left VTA, but for romantic love, it's bilateral. Both sides are firing.
Bilateral, both sides.
Yeah.
Huh. So maybe that suggests romantic love is, I don't know, more complex, It's tapping into more brain networks than just that sort of protective parent drive.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. Maybe it needs that full brain engagement for that level of focus. But speaking of intensity, here's a real wow fact from the research we looked at.
Okay.
Which kind of love do you think generates the most intense brain activity overall? You'd probably guess that initial passionate romantic spark, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That all-consuming feeling.
Turns out, nope. The sources point to parental love generating the most intense activity, especially in the striatum, another key part of the reward system.
Wow. More intense than new romance.
Yeah. It's this incredibly powerful signal, not seen quite the same way in other types of love, really underscores that biological drive to protect offspring.
That is intense. But, okay, if love is this biological commitment device, as the researchers put it, how does the brain help us ignore the, let's say, risks involved in committing that whole love is blind idea? Is there a brain basis for that?
Oh, absolutely. It's about what stops happening in the brain, strategic deactivation.
Okay.
When you're falling in love, activity dials down in your amygdala.
The fear center.
The fear center, exactly. So if you're less afraid of getting hurt, emotionally speaking, you're more likely to jump in, right? Take those risks.
Makes sense. No fear, no hesitation.
Precisely. But maybe even more importantly, another area goes quiet. Your medial prefrontal cortex.
And
That's your judgment center. Critical thinking, social assessment, the part that normally whispers, maybe check out those red flags. Yeah. When that goes quiet, you literally, neurologically, lose some of your ability to critically judge your new partner. Hello, rust-colored glasses.
Okay, so the VTA lights up, judgment goes offline. But what's the actual fuel? What are the chemicals making this happen? If love feels like an addiction, what's in that chemical cocktail?
The main fuel is definitely dopamine. That's
Yeah.
the neurotransmitter really driving the euphoria, the craving, the addictive quality.
Right.
And here's where the addiction parallel gets really strong. Key studies found that when people look at photos of their beloved, these dopamine-rich brain areas, they activate in patterns very similar to those seen in, say, cocaine or alcohol addiction.
Well, so when people joke about being addicted to love or intoxicated, they're not actually that far off,
Yeah.
chemically speaking.
Not far off at all. It's a literal chemical truth. It explains that feeling of needing to be near the person, the highs, and yeah, why breaking up can feel like genuine withdrawal. Dopamine is powerful stuff.
Okay, so dopamine brings the high. What about the obsession part, the constant thinking about them?
That seems to involve serotonin, and this is fascinating. In early-stage romantic love, serotonin levels actually decrease
Decrease. To what level?
to levels similar to those found in people with obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD.
Wait, hang on. Like clinical OCD levels.
That's what the research suggests, yes.
Yeah.
This drop might be why you get those intrusive thoughts, that constant mental preoccupation with your partner. You can't stop thinking about them, replaying conversations.
You're chemically wired to obsess.
Sort of, yeah. It's like an involuntary focus. And all this intensity, it takes a toll, right? Love can feel stressful.
Definitely. Butterflies, anxiety.
And you can measure that too. Cortisol, the stress hormone levels tend to increase in the early phase. Your body is basically gearing up, marshaling resources to deal with this major life event, this physiological crisis of falling in love. It's a big deal for your system.
Okay, but obviously that intense dopamine high and the serotonin-fueled obsession can't last forever or we'd never get anything done. How does the chemistry shift for long-term relationships?
Right, things need to calm down. And that's where other players become more important, especially oxytocin and vasopressin.
Oxytocin, that's the cuddle hormone, right? We hear about that one a lot.
We do. It's key for bonding, trust, feelings of attachment, released during intimacy, closeness. But it's not the whole story for long-term bonding. The research, especially classic studies in prairie voles, really highlights vasopressin too.
Prairie voles, what do they tell us?
They're useful because they form long-term pair bonds, like humans often do. Vasopressin in them is linked to things like mate guarding, territorial behavior.
Ah, the less Hallmark card aspects of love. Protection, possessiveness.
Kinda, yeah. It's about maintaining the bond. The key finding from that vole research was that you had to block both oxytocin and vasopressin receptors to really disrupt their social bonding. They work together. It's an integrated system for that long-term connection.
Okay, so it's a team effort.
Definitely. And then over the long haul, as that initial dopamine buzz fades, endorphins seem to play a bigger role. They bring those feelings of calm, comfort, security, the deep attachment you see in lasting relationships.
So the brain lights up, chemicals flood the system, bonds form. Let's pull back to the bigger picture. Evolution.
Yeah.
Why? Why did nature go to all this trouble, this chemical chaos? What's love for, evolutionarily speaking?
Yeah, great question. From that evolutionary standpoint, love looks like a really sophisticated adaptation, a survival tool. It functions as a biological commitment device.
A commitment device. Why do we need that more than, say, other animals?
Think about human babies. They are incredibly helpless for a very, very long time compared to other species. Years of dependency.
They need constant care.
Exactly. And that requires sustained cooperation between parents, that intense, addictive feeling of love. It motivates individuals to form strong, usually exclusive, long-term bonds. That pair bond makes it much more likely that the parents will stick together to raise those vulnerable offspring successfully. It boosts the survival chances of our genes, basically.
Okay, so it's fundamentally about ensuring the kids make it.
Yeah.
And this intense bonding, this commitment device, it feels universal. Is there evidence it's not just a Western invention or something?
Oh, absolutely. The evidence for universality is pretty compelling. There was a landmark cross-cultural study back in 1992 by Jankowiak and Fisher.
What did they find?
They looked at, I think, over 160 cultures and found evidence of romantic love in the vast majority, something like 88% of them. Now, how it's expressed, whether it's the basis for marriage, that varies hugely culture to culture.
Sure.
But the underlying capacity for that intense romantic feeling seems to be a human universal, a biosocial constant.
That's fascinating. And connecting this back to, well, us listening, all this evolutionary success, this pair bonding, does it actually pay off for our health, our longevity?
Huge payoffs, really significant and measurable. Having loving, supportive relationships consistently correlates with better health outcomes.
Like what specifically?
Things like decreased risk of heart disease, lower blood pressure, even better immune function. A lot of that is likely due to reduced chronic stress and maybe the positive effects of hormones like oxytocin circulating more often.
And I remember seeing some pretty startling statistics about lifespan.
Yeah, they're striking. Multiple studies show married individuals, on average, have a significantly lower risk of early death compared to single individuals. I think one figure was around a 24% lower risk.
24%, that's massive.
It is. And there's a specific clinical example cited in the sources that really drives it home.
Yeah.
Patients undergoing coronary artery bypass surgery. Married patients were 2.5 times more likely to still be alive 15 years later compared to unmarried ones. And get this, if they reported high marital satisfaction, that likelihood jumped to 3.2 times more likely to be alive.
Wow. So love, or at least a good, stable relationship, is literally like taking life-saving medicine.
In a very real, measurable way, yes.
Okay, we've got the brain chemistry, the evolution, the health benefits, amazing stuff.
hmm
But how do we navigate all this day to day? We need some kind of psychological map, right?
Exactly. Biology is the engine, but psychology helps us steer. And one really influential framework mentioned in the sources is Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love.
The triangle theory, right? What are the 3 points of the triangle?
Sternberg breaks love down into 3 core components. First, intimacy. That's the feeling of closeness, connection, bondedness, sharing secrets.
Okay.
Second is passion. That's the drive, the physical attraction, the romance, the sexual chemistry.
Guy.
And the third is commitment. This is the decision, short-term and long-term, to stick with the relationship, to maintain that love, share a future.
Intimacy, passion, commitment. So different types of love are just different combinations of those 3.
Exactly. For example, high passion and commitment, but low intimacy. Sternberg calls that fatuous love. Think whirlwind marriage that might lack deep connection. Or if you have intimacy and commitment, but the passion has faded, that's companionate love, like a deep friendship or a long-term marriage where the spark is gone, but the bond is strong. The ideal, according to Sternberg, is consummate love having all 3 components.
That makes a lot of sense as a map. What about our past? How does that influence our relationships now? I know attachment theory came up in the source.
Yes, attachment theory, developed initially by Bowlby and Ainsworth, and then applied to romantic love by Hazan and Shaver. It's crucial. It basically says our romantic relationships in adulthood are shaped by the bonds we formed with our primary caregivers as infants.
So how we learn to connect as babies affects how we love as adults.
Pretty much. That early experience creates a kind of blueprint. Hazan and Shaver identified 3 main adult attachment styles that carry forward: secure, anxious, and avoidant.
Can you briefly define those in relationships?
Sure. Secure attachment means you're generally comfortable with intimacy, you trust your partner, you feel safe being close, but also independent. It's usually linked to the best relationship outcomes.
Okay.
Anxious attachment often involves a fear of abandonment, needing a lot of reassurance, maybe feeling clingy or worrying excessively about the relationship. And avoidant attachment is kind of the opposite. Discomfort with closeness, valuing independence maybe too much, finding it hard to depend on others or have others depend on you. They might push partners away when things get serious.
And understanding your style and your partners can obviously help navigate all that intense brain chemistry we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. It provides context for how we experience and react to those biological urges. So, if we boil all this down, this deep dive into the science of love, what are the big takeaways for you, the listener? I think there are 3 key things.
Okay, get us with them.
All right, key takeaway 1. Love is chemical reality. It's not just a feeling, it's a measurable physiological state. Your brain on love is flooded with dopamine, serotonin adjusts, oxytocin and vasopressin kick in. It really is like a temporary natural addiction driven by your reward circuits.
Got it. Love brain chemistry. Key takeaway 2. It's evolutionary. This whole intense process isn't random. It's a powerful survival strategy honed by evolution, primarily to ensure we stick around to raise our very needy offspring. And as a bonus, it gives us adults measurable health and longevity benefits.
Exactly. Survival strategy with perks. And key takeaway 3. Biology meets biography. Love has this universal biological foundation. The basic chemistry seems consistent across cultures. But how we experience and express it is deeply shaped by our personal history, our culture, and especially those early attachment styles we just discussed.
It's amazing how far the science has come, from mapping brain regions like the VTA or seeing the prefrontal cortex quiet down to tracking the chemical surges. And now, scientists are even building computational models. You mentioned the resource allocation model from Conray Beam.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It treats finding a partner almost like an economic investment problem. How do you best allocate your mating resources? And these models are starting to predict real-life couple formation with, well, not perfect, but maybe around 45% accuracy.
45%? That's kind of high, actually.
It is, isn't it? And it leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought for you to chew on.
Okay.
If computational models can predict who we couple up with based on essentially optimized biological investment strategies, how much of falling in love is truly fate or magic, and how much is just a highly predictable, albeit complex, chemical reaction that we happen to write really great songs about?
Fate versus optimized biology. Something to definitely think about next time you hear that power ballad. Or feel your own heart start racing.